Welcome. My name is Mark Edward Johnson. If you see the King of Norway, please tell him I have a report on one of his knights that went missing 6.5 centuries ago. This is the log of the Kensington Runestone. I have been a rune master for over 26 years. I'm also degreed in the arts of scientific observation and research. We're going to talk about Futhark runic. It is one of the many kinds of runic we find all over Europe and the Mediterranean, each with its local dialect. Futhark runic is so ancient we only know it today by the first 6 letters of its alphabet, which spell Futhark. It has not been readable for over 4 centuries as an ideogram expression. And even then, it was used by a Swedish admiral as a secret code. I'm going to show you a dictionary of Futhark runic as an ideogram expression as expressed by all the runic scholars. Then I'm going to show you a set of grammar rules I discovered for Futhark runic. Using these 2 literary tools, we are able to read what the Kensington Runestone says. I will take you through the first 11 days of 64 that are recorded on the stone. Be warned. It is a bloody tale of Christianity served out on the edge of a sword. It is also the tale of a pagan bearing witness to miracles received by the Christian leader. Yes, be warned. Our story begins in 1898 with the discovery of the Kensington Runestone near the town of Kensington, Minnesota, which has given the stone its name. For 112 years, we have not known what the message on the stone was. Now you're going to be the first to finally know. This show has a number of connections that will be made to give you a complete picture. And the first of these is Helmer R. Holland. He was the first to make a detailed study of the inscription, and he did this with 50 years of experience behind him in the study of Norse exploration in North America. When reading the stone from left to right and using the Norwegian alphabet, he found a message on the stone, and it reads like so. 8 Goths and 22 Norwegians on exploration journey from Vinland through the west. We had camped 2 skerries, 1 day's journey north from this stone. We were in fishing one day. After we came home, found 10 men red with blood and dead. AVM, saved from evil. Have 10 men by the sea to look after our ship, 14 days journey from this island, year 1362. Mr. Holland admits himself that he had a guess at and ignore certain runes on the stone in order to arrive at this message. The assumption being that runic was encryptic and therefore meant to be hard to understand. Mr. Holland employed a technique of research that's used widely today by the galleon explorers off the coast of Florida. He went back to Europe to look for any clue as to who the stone carvers might be. This is the connection to my story. Mr. Holland found a commission in the Royal Norwegian Archives given to a Sir Paul Knutsen by the then Viking Christian king Magnus. It instructs him to be zealous in his travels to the New World and to take fighting men, not clerics. These are the basic ingredients of a medieval religious crusade. Reportedly, the king wrote, "We ask you that you accept this, our command, with right goodwill for the cause, inasmuch as we do it for the honor of God and for the sake of our predecessors who in Greenland established Christianity and have maintained it to this time, and we will not let it perish in our day." It wasn't just driving the non-believers out, but actually saving lost souls and God and your ancestors thrown in to boot. As far as zealot incarnations goes, this one is a prize winner. Sir Paul's early travels went from Norway to Iceland, then on to Greenland and Vinland. To search further meant using the local longships and their non-Norwegian crews. After all, these Goths had been Viking up and down the coast region for years and knew how to navigate the treacherous waters known today as Hudson Straits, leading into what is known today as Hudson Bay. They also would be good as guides, knowing as they did the natives' ways. This is where my story picks up Herrick and Talik, the third connection. Thanks to the work of Alf Mung and O.G. Landsberg and their publication, Norse Medieval Cryptography and Runic Carvings. They will tell you in that publication that the Kensington Runestone contains the names of these two people in panthetic encryption. And the encryption states that Herrick composed the message and Talik carved it on Sunday, April 24th, 1362 AD. So here was Herrick and Talik eking out an existence in Vinland. And what was good about it? The plague wasn't here. The religious wars weren't here. Societies ran more along democratic lines than feudal. You didn't have to spend so much time praying in a Christian church as they did back in Iceland or Greenland. And if you wanted to mention Thor or Odin, it wouldn't create a stir. You could still get a good runestone reading from a druid, or at least a witch. So when a Norwegian sail appeared over the horizon, as everyone shaded their eyes to look at it, they thought, Ave Maria, here come the Christians. What will they want now? In Iceland and Greenland, it had been to have churches built and holy tillable ground set aside for graveyards. They installed bishops to shepherd the people and reduce religious freedom. But they also brought trade goods and gold. So it would be with mixed emotions these Viking traders meet any ship from Norway. This is the background I wanted you to be aware of as I show you the message I found on the stone. The scholars record that runic was encryptic and could be read from left to right, from right to left, from top to bottom, or bottom to top. There never was a dictionary to standardize the form or usage. Also, runic was written in several different forms depending on where in the world you were. There was a Norwegian form and a Swedish or Goth form for the sake of our story. The oldest runic appears in Egyptian hieroglyphics. As the Northmen came into contact with Christianity, they began to define their runic in terms of an Arabic letter alphabet. However, before that, it was used more like the chop marks of Asia. This rune is named Uras and called the Aurochs, meaning wild ox. However, it can also stand for strength, stamina, or perseverance, depending on the context in which it appears. This expressive concept is true of all the rune symbols. As I studied the history of runic, I discovered that while all the scholars made mention of runic as an ideogram expression, none of them had organized it into a comprehensive form of communication as an ideogram. An ideogram is a symbol like aurochs, which represents an object or idea without expressing the word for it. All of the scholars that I research and identify in part in my bibliography agree in their description of the ideogram definitions, while listing several meanings for each Futhark symbol. I decided to organize runic as an ideogram expression into a dictionary. I simply list each symbol with its recorded meanings according to the scholar's text and indicate which can be reversed to indicate the antithesis for each symbol. It is 2 pages in total, and there is complete agreement between all the runic scholars on the meanings of all the symbols. In research, this is a 100% correlation. I apply some prejudice to the story in that I choose ideogram definitions from the list of possibilities for each symbol to express the type of information one working Norseman, who was a Viking, would want to communicate to his associates who would follow his trail looking for survivors. This eliminates the spiritual and philosophical expressions for each symbol and leaves expressions by the author of verbs and nouns. This is how the story I have to relate sets out to be read. The one exception is the expression for spiritual help, which I believe that Herrick wished to express in the narrative. The symbol I am talking about is Elhaze. The expression on the left carries a burden. The expression on the right does not. The expression on the left, I believe, is the mundane or earthly use of the symbol, meaning defense, while the one on the right, without burden, expresses unearthly defense or spiritual help. In my management classes, they would teach me to listen for what's not said as well as what is, because that is the other half of the story you are dealing with. So pay attention to the runes we do not see in the story. The rune for joy, for instance. My discovery of a narrative came from a hunch. Nobody had ever tried to read the runes from left to left using the fiery style of interpretation, treating each rune like a chop mark. The first test, is there a message there, or will I find only gibberish? I began by going from right to left and interpreting each rune like a chop mark, expressing a thought linked together between the dots to form a complete expression. This is what I found. When you study runic, it is important to be aware that runic can say different things to different people and even to the same person at different times. So when you study an inscription, it is important to view it from different angles under differing lighting conditions to make sure it says what you think it says. For instance, the symbol for partnership, Gibu, can have a little nick in the upper right bar. This means there's something secret about that partnership. Like any good runic mystery, there has to be a lock, something which must be opened before you can enter. This is it. This symbol does not appear anywhere else in the runic world. It is one of those shading aspects that makes us want to suspect the stone of being a fraud. I went through all the scholars' texts, and having found nothing that related to it, I was ready to give up. Then I remembered the quote from A Study in Scarlet by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I quote, "How often have I said to you that when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth," unquote. What was left was Futhark runic. So I asked myself, does it at all resemble any of the runes here? There is Anzu's, the rune for signals, but that has the two sidebars at one end of the vertical bar, not in the middle. Then there was Fihu, the rune for possessions, but the sidebars on our mystery rune were on the opposite side and dropped down to a horizontal position. I grew up in a farmhouse that was built before electricity, and in the kitchen it had a wood-burning stove. Also, there was a flour bin. This flour bin was a pine board affair with a beeswax coating on the inside. When you opened the bin, it dropped down. The mystery rune made me think of this function. Could be the rune Fihu reversed, allowing the author to express gain or loss of possessions. On a commercial venture, this would be important information to relate about your results. So I made what is known in research circles as a SWAG, scientific wild-ass guess.